And I'll tell you why I'm upset. Let me go to you. Go to you. Go to you. And join this space. My own space. Okay. Welcome to the No Filter Podcast. This is your host, Gamecast. And we are going to be talking about some interesting things I feel like I need to discuss and talk about here. But before I do, I need to actually list some things here. So let's see. I know I pissed a whole bunch of people off. Who I know people are so upset that I said what I said, and I don't apologize. I don't apologize for it. I don't apologize for it because it's true. It's true. We have two topics to talk about, like we always do, and I apologize for my voice sounding as hoarse as it does, but please bear with it. It's the best I can do right now. So, but yes, I know I pissed a lot of people off. The two subjects that we're going to be talking about is the origins of the console war. And the console war that we are talking about is none other than the PlayStation versus the Xbox, because for some reason, it doesn't exist anywhere else. And we're not talking about your typical, my console is better than your console situation. Oh, no, we're not talking about those things. We are actually talking about the amount of vitriol we have, or, well, I would say Xbox and ponies have. So what I've actually done here is I've set up two tweets. What's going on? The entree. Make sure I got this shit set up. So if anybody wants to take a peek at what's going on, they can feel free to take a peek. Any second here. All right, I'm going to do this here. The first topic that I want to talk about, again, I have to repeat myself because I typically repeat myself. I don't like how it sounded. I want to make it sound better than that. Either way, the first topic is the origins of the console war, like I said before. This is different from a typical console war that you would have back in the day. If you're over 30 years old, there were console wars between Nintendo and Sega. And those basically played out in such a benign way, almost like, I don't want to say sports, but it is what it is. You liked what you like. You liked what kind of game that you like. And you would believe that your game is better than the other one, or your system is better than the other one. And the way that you would actually compete, or to prove your case, is to show why, right? So back in the day, these consoles were not really they weren't like multimedia consoles, that started with the Saturn and PlayStation, really, or just Sega bringing things out there. But we're talking about, hey, I like Sega, I like Mario, and Mario is a better game than Nintendo. And you'd be like, I'm sorry, Mario is a better game than Sega. Sonic, right? And then you'd be like, as a Sega fan, no, Sonic is a better game than Mario. And you both will compete. You both will basically have your dossiers and stuff like that, and state that this is the reason why I think that this is better. That's the reason why I think that that's better. And then you compare the two, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes you would even go as far as to go to your friend's house and play those games to validate your opinion, but you still experienced it. And it wasn't bad. I was a Sega fanboy, like a strong Sega fanboy. I didn't want to have anything to do with Nintendo. Personally, I thought that Nintendo was such a baby console, man. Even though I was like, I don't know, like 9, 10 years old, I was just like, man, these things look weird. And I didn't think too much of it until Sega came out. Sega turned out, what's going on, Black? Sega turned out to be a very mature, had a very mature presentation. So it was very interesting to see how that played out. And I liked it. You know, that's what I wanted to do. This one, I have to edit this, right? No. So I wasn't really thinking about it. You know what I mean? But I did know that it was playing too much on the kids front, man. I just wasn't feeling it until Sega came out and showed it to be more, you know, basically more mature. And I gravitated towards that. Plus, when I was younger, I used to run a lot. I used to sprint as fast as I can. I used to, you know, they had X-Men back then with characters that were super fast. You had the Flash from DC. You had all this other shit. So my favorite color was blue, by the way. So when Sega came out with Sonic, y'all, it was pretty much a wrap for me. And then I played Prince of Persia and all this other stuff, which I didn't even know back then was actually a part of. It was on Game Boy as well. So that's what we used to kind of fight. You know, we used to basically compare that shit together. That's how we used to actually handle and do things. But then something happened. These corporations actually started to do some very unprofessional shit. You know, Sega constantly had such a, I don't know, like a inferiority complex, man, where they were constantly talking about blast processing, constantly trying to shit on Nintendo and their Mario games. There was a whole bunch of weird shit that was going on back in the day. A whole bunch of weird shit. But for some reason, maybe it was us children being kind of naive to that. We still actually ended up playing each other's games. And sometimes we would play that shit to completion and then go back home to our own consoles and experiences that we actually liked without all of that fucking hate and all of that fucking pent up passion that we had back in the day, or the hate that we have now that you see now. And it's like, I don't know if it's a combination of today's issues where people just cannot have an opinion. You just have to be right. You can't take L's ever in life, but maybe that's all together. But back when they had the Saturn and the N64, remember, everyone was still comparing games, you know what I mean, to show off their console, to show which one was the better one. And keep that in mind. That's very important to know. That is a very important thing to know. That's how it used to be back in the day. What's going on, Adam? Sega did some weird things. Sega seen some moderate success, and they didn't want to let that go. And so they kept creating these add-ons to these consoles and shit like that. And at first, it was kind of cool to know that your system was future-proof, you know, like the 3DO and combining those things and all the other stuff. They had a Game Gear that was actually better tech-wise than the Game Boy. But Sega had a tendency to over-engineer their shit. You know what I mean? They didn't know when to stop. And that kind of led them into to the state they are in now. You know, they had a lot of future forward-thinking innovations that we still use to this day. That's the difference that's the difference from where it is now. What's going on, Fatal? And Nintendo had their issues too. Nintendo had an image to uphold. And Nintendo also didn't care too much for third party. They would rather just make their own shit. You know what I mean? That was pretty much it. I'm going to make my own shit. And because they were the only ones, people would go to Sega, and Nintendo couldn't have that either. So Nintendo had to kind of allow for a platform for third party. The problem here is that they wanted their platform to look better. So they did not want to take on any fucking junk. There was the Nintendo quality, seal of quality that they used to put on their games and stuff like that. And their games typically cannibalized any kind of third party, and it still does it to this day. That was one of the biggest. That's the biggest issue of Nintendo. And plus, the Saturn was very hard to develop for as well. In the process of making a new console, just to take a couple steps back, they went to Panasonic. They went to a couple of different tech companies to expand their technology. And Sega was one of them, or Sony was one of them. We really know the history of that one. If you're a gamer, I don't need to really repeat it. It pissed off Sony to the point where it was like, fuck them niggas. I'm going to create my own console, which we all know of as the PlayStation. PlayStation came in there without any type of games to their name first party. Their bread and butter was to create a platform for a third party to go to, or so people could just make games. Obviously, Nintendo wasn't going to make a game Sony was going to make Nintendo was going to make a game for Sony. Obviously, we got that going on. That was the truth of the matter, right? But third party kind of gravitated. There was a lot of third party that were pleading with Nintendo to be like, "Yo, your next console, I need more space, and it needs to not be as expensive as it is. And you need to fucking stop choking me, not some white bitch in the sex room, and stop choking me." You know what I'm saying? And Nintendo refused. And when it came to Sega's system was too convoluted to learn how to use. Their marketing and messaging was all over the place, and they succumbed to their failures and disappeared into obscurity in terms of consoles. So we already got that situation going on. That's what was going on back then. But there was a pretty cool haven of it was a good haven for PlayStation to have their console. You know what I'm saying? For a third party to go to PlayStation, that was a good haven. They didn't have as many restrictions. The only restriction really was to make sure that the game was 3D. So that's why we had an overabundance of 3D games and not that many 2D games. The PS1 was actually really good at creating 3D environments very easily. Not the best looking shits, but it was at least easy to get into. And Nintendo was very cocky. They didn't think that Sony had a chance in hell because they didn't have any kind of Nintendo seal of quality type games. And eventually, because of the freedom that Sony allowed, a lot of cool games came out of that, which kind of challenged Nintendo. And we already know the rest is history. 100 million PlayStations versus 20 million N64s. Was it 40? I can't remember. Maybe it was 40. One of those two. Whatever it was dwarfed. So then we have the next generation of consoles, right? Nintendo was super salty at that situation, right? They didn't want to use any type of format that Sony had anything to deal with at all. So they used this weird ass fucking DVD, that little tiny ass disc. They just didn't want to get with the times. They just didn't want to have any part of it. They wanted their own environment, and that's cool. You can have your own environment. You know, PlayStation actually continue on their legacy by allowing developers to do what they want to do. The only problem was in order for these systems to be very powerful at cheaply with cheap parts, you had to get really creative with or unorthodox with your engines, which caused major difficulties. But the amount of hype that the PlayStation 2 received, developers got over that shit real quick and were able to get their games up and running. And it just was a runaway train. You know what I'm saying? I think a year after, if I'm not mistaken, a year and a half after, Xbox came to the scene. We already had Dreamcast. Dreamcast was almost a perfect machine. That the only reason why that shit failed, which is unfortunate, a lot of people think that Sega abandoned the Dreamcast. What ended up failing the Dreamcast was the consumer. And it's Sega's mishandling of their proprietary disc, those gigabyte discs that was easily pirated. Piracy killed the Dreamcast. And on top of it, they owe Microsoft, which helped them create the system, a lot of money. So that's what happened to them. Just as a side note. Sega came in there, or not Sega, but Microsoft came in there to disrupt the industry because they saw that Sony was trying to be a multimedia, company. It played DVDs, it played CDs. You can get a little um, Ethernet adapter, go online. You could put an operating system on the PS2. And that was a little bit worrying for Microsoft for whatever reason, because they got fucking billions and billions. They didn't want that shit to happen as well. It was affecting their PC market. So they came out with the Xbox, which honestly, that had something to do with DirectX. That's where the X came from when it comes to the Xbox. So that's what ended up happening with that. So I'm periodically checking my space to make sure that, I'm not missing out on anything. If anybody wanted to jump in or chat or whatever the case is, that's there. But that's what ended up happening with that generation. We all know that the PS2 eventually sold 155 million because that system allowed any kind of game. And so Sony still didn't have their own games consistently. I mean, Gran Turismo was really the only one. And then Naughty Dog wasn't theirs until the PS2. And they created Jack and Dexter, which was nowhere close to being as big as Crash. It didn't have the following, but they relied heavily on third party. And third party had nowhere to go if they wanted to because of the massive gap in user base count. 20 million for the, 9 million for the Dreamcast, which they stopped making those. 20 million for the GameCube and 20 million for the Xbox. Here's where things get interesting. Sony became overly ambitious and very PlayStation, or very Sony-like. That was the problem. That was the biggest problem. Sony became super Sega and started to over-engineer their console. Now, there was a reason for the over-engineering, and the over-engineering of that console, right, was exclusively because they wanted to go into the CPU market. So they had a joint effort with IBM, Toshiba, and themselves to create a CPU that would rival Intel. Because back in the day, CPUs was the creme de la creme, not the GPUs like it is today. And they felt they were going to use the PlayStation name as a way to catapult their chips. And so they could put it in TVs and anything else that they wanted to put in, as well as the Blu-ray. So you have this over-engineered system, right? And they just couldn't meet the production. So they delayed it. And Microsoft saw a perfect opportunity. And they used all sorts of underhanded corporate fucking tricks. And that's fine. It's business, right? But this is the reason why this type of console war started. That was the problem. Huge boats. When the PlayStation 3 released a year later, Microsoft had a boat, says Microsoft loves PlayStation, just mocking them. They did some underhanded deals with third party. Their objective was to shatter the image of PlayStation. Whatever you know PlayStation for, it was going to be null and void because they would have the same advantage. And that same advantage was third party. Third party is what made PlayStation. And Nintendo certainly wasn't going to take that mantle because they were salty because of what happened in the previous generation. They didn't want that shit at all. Plus, the GameCube didn't sell that well. They were on their Wii kick at that time, and they were doing their numbers in a separate alternate dimension, I guess you can call it, right? So while Xbox had a year start, right, they were working with all of these fucking developers and saying that basically Sony's nowhere around. We have a cheaper fucking development unit. It's cheaper. So you're going to worry about that shit, right? We already got about 6-7 million off rip, and we already know how expensive these fucking these games could be. So you're going to need all the fucking time you're going to need to be there first and make sure you don't miss your projections because you're going to lose a lot of money making these crazy ass fucking games, right? That was the situation. Cool. Reluctantly, the third party went to Microsoft. Whatever deal that they made behind the scenes, they went to Microsoft. So games that we saw that that was exclusively on PlayStation because PlayStation had the recognition, so to appear on Xbox. And then since E3 was big at the time, every time they would come out to E3, they would have an executive that had a tattoo that said that we got Grand Theft Auto, we got Final Fantasy, we got this. And you start to see this churning of, this culture within the Xbox community. You know what I'm saying? This this very American like behavior of just rolling up on your shit and taking it. You know what I mean? So for whatever reason, you got that type of mentality going on with them. And all the fans kind of like fell in line with this. It was fun to see somebody at the top get chopped the fuck down. Because back when they used to play the Xbox, the original one, it was just like people were asking these fans, why are you paying it online? And they would say Halo. And they were like, why do you have to pay online? They would say, because it's a very curated experience. You can't get anywhere else. This system has the shit built in, and we got a hard drive. I could take that. Right. And that was the end of the argument. From my understanding and memory, I don't believe anybody really called Xbox or Xbox fans stupid for purchasing an Xbox. I had a friend that purchased it as well. And I was curious to see what it was doing, although I didn't like Microsoft. And I was like, okay, Ninja got in at 720p. Okay, these games are 60 frames a second. Okay, blah, 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 blah. So not only did Microsoft basically started to, how can I put this, troll, especially during that time with YouTube and everything else, troll Sony and have that shit out there. They made ultimatums with the developers, and they had the time frame to do so because Sony couldn't do a damn thing about it. These engines were not capable in the previous generation. So these people need to get their games out now, and they needed a console to do it. So they had that ultimatum shit going on. And on top of it, they work with retailers to put their items first or in front of the storefront. They paid for that real estate. They paid for that shit, which was very interesting. So every time you go into the store, and oh, by the way, I had some friends that worked at GameStop, and they would have meetings with executives from Xbox, like not big executive, but people from that branch, right? And they would give them lanyards, they would give them bags and all sorts of shit. So when you did speak to, what's going on, White Chocolate? When you did speak to a representative, right, at GameStop or electronic boutiques, they were always pro Xbox because of the deals that they were getting. They made them feel special, and so they were bribed in a way. PlayStation gamers had to fight hard as fuck to not look stupid because people from GameStop, people from EB, people from IGN, and the whole media shitted on PlayStation consistently on a regular intervals because we don't want a console that does more than play games. We don't want Blu-ray. You don't need Blu-ray apparently because you can get prettier games on an Xbox because the Xbox was easier to develop for. And we didn't need games to be that big anyway. The DVD was enough, right? And if I did want to do something like watch movies or multimedia, I could just buy the HD DVD edition. We don't need Wi-Fi. Why do we need Wi-Fi for? We have a LAN cable. Why are you forcing us to buy all this shit? Why is your console $600 and you know that we're in a recession back in 2007 and 8? Sony was the bona fide bad guy back then. Absolutely the bona fide bad guy. Sony had to do something because optically it looked really fucking bad. Sales-wise, it looked bad. Sony has so many interviews about why there's still PlayStations on the shelves. Their E3 was a fucking disaster. Absolutely disaster. Just all over. PR was shit. We had free online. but it had a bad stigma. Our store wasn't as fully fleshed out as Microsoft because they also worked on software and they did Xbox Live and they were kind of they were ahead. That was one thing that Xbox did that was very seamless. And back then it was kind of benign, the stuff that they were doing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you paid online, but they made sure that all of your screen name was basically covers every single game that had online play. But the name of the game for Microsoft was buy Xbox Live to play online so you could continue to pay that subscription. That's why you needed Xbox Live to play or to play Netflix back then. So it was just a sloppy experience on the PS3, and Sony had to do something. So what Sony did, they went back to the basics. They started creating games from the developers they were acquiring over the years. And still, it wasn't enough. You had your Uncharted, which looked better than anything that was there. God of War looked better than a lot of PC games at the moment or at that time. You had Killzone. Killzone was shitted on by being called a space Nazi game and compared to Halo consistently. Uncharted 2 started to change that. And we finally had a killer app. We finally had a killer app that meant something to these motherfuckers, finally. And we would tell them, we have free online. We're not stupid for buying this. We don't need to have wires all over the place for Wi-Fi. And these games are getting bigger and bigger. We don't need 2 discs. We have all these things, and still the media shitted on our decision to buy a PS3, despite the fact that the games were quality. But Sony kept plugging away at that in that direction. Finally, we got Retribution when The Last of Us came out. That was the final nail in the coffin to solidify what Sony was trying to do. It was a long time, but Sony finally had a killer app and was able to show everybody that they were first in class when it came to quality. Hate to say it to you. We're not talking about we're gonna have to decline that one. I don't know who the fuck that is. We finally can you guys can I be heard? Okay, cool. It's cool. You know what? People random numbers is calling me and shit. Fuck that shit. All right, cool. Okay, cool. Finally, people acknowledged us and said that this Sony has something going on. We're not talking about Metacritic. We talk about just how people felt. People felt this shit. They felt that this was good. This is good shit. And so, with all the hate that PlayStation owners gotten for the duration of this, what was the 7th generation consoles, now comes PS4. And at the time, Microsoft did a crazy pivot. They started focusing on media to try to catch up because now people started to see the validity of having a decent multimedia setup that you can put in Netflix because there wasn't smart TVs weren't really a thing. So your console doubled as a smart TV and you could play games. So Netflix blew up because of this shit as well. And you didn't need a subscription for PlayStation Plus to watch Netflix. But people thought that gaming was dying because the sales started to drop off. And Microsoft kind of saw that people were watching Netflix and not really playing any games. So they worked on a Nintendo Wii killer by making Kinect. You know what I mean? So this Sony with the move. I don't care about the numbers, about how Sony was making a waggle in the PS2 era. It doesn't matter. What came out first was Nintendo, and they were trying to compete with them. I'm going to keep it a stack. That's real talk. I know that many companies make a lot of patents that doesn't come out, but Nintendo was brave enough to create that shit, or just conservative, however way you want to put it. And Microsoft started to really pivot towards multimedia, despite the fact that in the beginning of the generation, no one cared about multimedia, you know. And so when the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, we started getting stats that these consoles are pretty powerful. And could be the last console. We didn't think it was so long in the tooth. People didn't think that shit would exist. They felt that console gaming was going to die during the 8th generation. And so I think the eighth generation being Xbox One and PS4. Sony said, fuck it. We don't have anything to lose. We have games that kind of rivals, kind of rival fucking shit that you can find on Netflix or movie theaters at this point, but The Last of Us and the other games they had, Uncharted and stuff like that. And so with all of the testing that they've done with multiplayer games, they realized that their multiplayer games did not stick. So they focused on single player, and Xbox came out. Well, they focused on power. That was one thing. They focused on ease of use, and they had a whole E3 presentation on how easy it was to make a game on PS4. And they focused on how powerful it was compared to the rest. Then they focused on, how easy things were going to be, multitasking and things like that, which is nothing compared to what we have now, just in general with technology. And then they started showing you the games. If you like the stuff that we put out there on PS3, it's going to get better. And they focus so much on single player. And they had these deals, right? That they spent a lot of money to get exclusivity. Now, they didn't want to have the whole game exclusive, for sure. They didn't want to have the whole game exclusive, but they wanted to have partial, DLC or, stuff like that. Something in there that was exclusive. Because they didn't have the leverage that Microsoft had of being out on the field for a year. But one thing started to be clear is that there were because DRM was starting to pop up. DRM really hurt Microsoft and what they were trying to do. And on top of it, the console was big and ugly, like really big. And people could have accepted that size, but it was weaker than the PS4. So that was like baffling, to people. And it started to show with Digital Foundry, where the games were consistently getting their ass whooped by the PS4 variant. So now we got a powerful console. Now DRM is not one thing. Yeah, we got to pay online, but we also have 2 free games a month, which Microsoft Xbox Live did not have anything. You just paid online for the longest. That's all you did is pay online, and you needed Xbox Live to play Netflix and free to play games. So let's count this shit up, because it's going to be crucial into where we are now and why it's such a fucking problem. It's going to be very crucial, right? Number one, Microsoft came out with DRM. Nobody fucking wanted that shit at all. At that time, people wanted to have their own games because of the ramifications of what DRM stands for. Even to this day, we have some issues with DRM. Number two, they came out $100 more expensive. Aesthetically, number three, it was bigger. So you had less place to fucking put it. And it was number what was it, 4, I guess I'm on? And it was weaker. And number 5, they didn't have to fight and claw their way up to the hill to get that console. I mean, to get their IPs. They didn't have to do any of that shit. They built up that rapport over the previous generation. And Microsoft was so focused on third-party deals that they were left with their pants down with Halo, Forza, and Gears of War. And they stuck by that shit. And at this point in time, the PS4 was a runaway success. And all of that whole 6 years of being beat the fuck up, PlayStation fans were tired of it. Look at all the stupid shit in the media was pushing this agenda about the PS3 being such a shitty console. And no one's calling out Microsoft other than DRM. You know what I'm saying? First, it was bad. And then all of a sudden, it switched to being an apologist, the media, when it came to Xbox One. You know what I'm saying? So whatever deals that they had going on with Microsoft, they didn't have any leverage anymore because the PS4 clearly outsold it by a decent margin. And number two, the Xbox don't buy games mostly. Sorry, they don't. For some reason, this pissed off the loyalists of Xbox. They were pissed. They didn't want to look stupid. They didn't want to apologize. Like I said earlier, people don't want their opinions to be invalidated in this landscape that we live in. You know, So, despite the fact that all odds are against them and they look silly, this is the fucking problem with them. Who tickled my ear? Who requests to speak? White chocolate, what's going on, my broski? You didn't make a mistake and hit the button, did you?
No, I've requested to come up, man.
This time it was for real.
Yeah.
What's going on, bro? What you got to say about all this?
Yeah, and I was just going to comment on obviously that Xbox comment, mate. It's not just the bots. It's for some reason everyone seems to take shit offensively. Like I can say that I didn't like Tunic, and I'd have a plethora of Xbox down my throat. Like, how can you say that you didn't like Tunic? It's an awesome game. Yeah, in your fucking opinion. But unfortunately, what you don't seem to realize is your opinion is subjective to you, which means that your opinion to me is trash. Yeah. And it's this mentality that, oh, well, if you don't agree with me, then you're a dickhead and you need to be cancelled. It's that mentality in this gaming community that I can't comprehend it at all. Like, at all, man.
It's a massive issue with the world beyond gaming, but I want to keep it as gaming. It's ridiculous. You cannot have your own opinion.
There's literally two communities in Twitter that I'm involved in. One is the comic book community, and the other is gaming community. And I'll tell you what, they are both fucking ridiculously toxic.
It really is, especially the comic community. It's so bad, right? Now, I'm not being an apologist for Sony's Marvel movies, right? Even though it's not a comic book, but it still uses the comic book IPs. I'm not going to be an apologist for Morbius, but I know it shouldn't have gotten a 16. You know what I'm saying?
That film should never have been made.
Even if, because there's a lot of reasons for it, even if, right? Since it is made, and your opinion states that I don't like the movie and it shouldn't have been made, which is cool. If you are a professional reviewer, you don't have the right to just downvote shit and unjustifiably.
You can take your if you're a professional reviewer, you should be able to take your biased opinions out of your review.
That would be the thing. If you said that Morbius is a mediocre movie, so be it. But everybody can clear. I mean, shit. Movies has been super. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the campaign for that movie was so ridiculous, right? Go see another movie. Go, and they would have a specific. And the real vitriol for this shit is, quite frankly, they want Disney to handle all Marvel movies, and that's where I draw the line. Personally, I don't like the way that they do their movies. They're limited because of their image. There could be a lot of dark movies.
I can agree to that, but then you've also got to bear in mind that Disney has its subsidiary film distributors like Buena Vista, and Buena Vista is famous for distributing Halloween.
The problem here is that Marvel is synonymous with Disney at this point. So you can't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Buena Vista is Disney.
No, I know, but that's an obscure tidbit. That's an obscure piece of knowledge. When people look at Spider-Man or X-Men or the Eternals, they all automatic, or Star Wars even. They look at Disney, and so if they put something out, it could fuck up that brand. If they kept it Marvel and left it there, or they make such a big splash with their acquisition, it would have been a different story, because they can't even at this point. I want to see how Deadpool is going to come out. I'm curious to see how that's going to be. What we know now.
Have you seen Free Guy?
No.
Go watch Free Guy, mate, and you'll get a slight semblance of what a PG-13 type Deadpool will be like.
Yeah, but we used to rated R, though.
It does, correct. It does. But unfortunately, that's never going to happen with Disney.
That's what I mean. That's the only problem that I have. If they would have kept it separate, like you said, with the whole Halloween and the Buena Vista, I've been fine. You know what I'm saying? And they can still reap the rewards of having it that way, and you know what I mean, and have more freedom. So that's why.
I will say that a PG-13 Deadpool, it can be quite good, mate, because they've sort of already done it with the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon series. You know, they had Deadpool in that, and he was just more on the funny side rather than the psychotic side.
You know, the funny thing is the Spider-Man, the animated TV show, that was a dark fucking show, and so was X-Men. I don't think any of those things were kid shows. You know what I'm saying? They had
some very adult themes, didn't they?
Yeah. So you can still do it without the blood and shit like that, because you can always suggest certain things. The way that Disney handles their things, I'm not a big fan of. But, you know, all you could do is really digress. But going back to the Xbox situation, like you said before, the console community is super fucking toxic. It is extremely toxic. And this is what I wanted to kind of touch upon. So just to wrap up the crazy ass monologue, the PlayStation people basically at the end of the day, or the media, every time I went into a GameStop or an EB, right, they were always pushing Xbox 360. I never wanted an Xbox, but they were like, oh, they made me feel so bad for getting a PlayStation. And then when I finally got a PlayStation, I walked into the store. All I saw was Xbox shit all around. I had to go all the way to the back of the store just to get my PlayStation 3 games. You know what I'm saying? It was that, and that wasn't a decision of the store. That was fucking Microsoft and their deals. Fine. You know what I'm saying? But people,
I know exactly what you're on about, mate. I remember when I first bought my PS3, it kind of like malfunctioned after about a week, but luckily it was still under warranty, so I took it back to the game shop that I got it from, and rather than giving me a new console or fixing it, they tried shoving the Xbox down my throat. Oh, well, why don't you just trade it in and get some money off an Xbox? Because I don't fucking want an Xbox. If I would have wanted an Xbox, I'd have bought a fucking Xbox. You know?
I remember when I first bought it, right? And the snarky little chick, she goes, I put the console up there, and I lay it on the console, or I asked for it, and she gets, you said an Xbox? I said, no, I want a PS3. Oh. Are you going to have multiple method of cash or method of payment? Because I know it's $600. I was like, this bitch, yo, she fucking wild. I was like, no, I have the money. Oh, okay. I don't know if you know this, but Final Fantasy is also coming to Xbox. That's what they let you know. I was like, yo, who is this chick? I was like, this chick is wild. Who is this lady? And she was like, I know it's expensive, but maybe you should put a protection plan on there so you don't have to spend that whole $600. That's what they let you know. And I also want to tell you, too, the controls don't rumble either. And she's like putting my shit in the bag. I was like, who? This bitch. I was like, yo, it was all the time. And then I would get in there and I would hear when I would go in the store, I would hear them talking. And they would be talking about Halo, which is fine. Halo 3 was a really good game. And they would be like, oh, I just wish the PlayStation had something like Halo. And then you hear this one person was like, yeah, they have Killzone. No one cares about Killzone. No one cares about that. Space Nazis. Nobody cares about that. I was like, hey, yo. I was like, this shit. Bro,
every time I've had people knock Killzone, mate, I've been like, well, clearly you never played the game. The first game was beautiful. The second game was even better. And Shadowfall was, even though people slated it, it was a fucking good game, and it looks fucking good as well.
Shadowfall I played for a very long time. Now, I can admit, I didn't necessarily like the art. What's going on? What the fuck? I can't see who's that making those waves. Yo, Mr. Hart, what's going on? So one of the things that was Shadowfall, the online was super unbalanced. That was the biggest fucking problem with that game. Huge issue.
I never actually played the online with Shadowfall. I only played through the campaign.
And plus, I didn't like the clean environments. I But my PSN name is Dual Disaster. I went through this phase of looking at natural disasters and tornadoes and shit like that. And to me, when I played Killzone 2, it looked crazy. You know what I mean? It was too tame looking. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? I actually played, I think I logged in 1,000 hours in Killzone Shadowfall. Like I would just go in there and just fuck around with it. You know what I'm saying? It was, you know, so I can pick out all the flaws of the shit that I like through and through. I have no qualms with doing that, but I still played it and liked it. And to this day, it's funny. You'll see me on PSN. I'll occasionally play the game, and then I'll get people that will watch me, which the YouTube channel is a Gamecast. But you see people watching, shameless plug, and they were like, "Oh, what game is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's Killzone." Oh, I gotta play this. I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. You gotta be a fan, man. I don't want to hear it and say that I don't care if it's $2. You have to have because not everybody like anchovies. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. I would never shit on it. I would never shit on it, but not everybody likes it. I don't like that shit, but I'm saying this is extremely acquired taste. So going back to the topic, right? Because I want to get into this next one. Oh my God, it was fucking crazy. This conversation I had earlier with this Japanese shit. But before I go in there, right? Because I want to jump. As soon as I do this, I want to jump in. I want to get your thoughts and jump right in it. So, PlayStation guys were tired of this shit, the treatment that we got, the market and media, the IGNs, the GameStop. Every time PlayStation came out with something, they were always talking about some bullshit about a game that was better on the 360 or multi-platform, or we wish we'd have to pay online or whatever it was. And it was just fucking tiring. So when PlayStation fans got their retribution on PS4 and had games to back it up, because my whole argument, right, was when this first kicked off, right, when we were younger, we used to have the same type of console wars, you know what I'm saying? But instead of just mindlessly saying that this is better without any context or any kind of ammunition, we threw our games at the competition. Sonic is better, you know what I'm saying? And then Nintendo be like, Mario was better. And then, you know what I'm saying? You know, and they were like, Knights was better. And then they were like, you know, Zelda was better. They had actual games to use as ammunition to explain which one is better. Fast forward to where we are at now, because Microsoft's decisions with Game Pass, and they just now started to acquire fucking development studios. 17 years later, you were in the gaming market for 21 years, and 17 years later, you decided to invest in first party. You know what I'm saying? So after all the mishaps that the Xbox One dealt with, being more expensive, the DRM, the being larger, the being weaker, the having a Connect situation going on, and people didn't like it, of course PlayStation fans was going to throw that up, because we dealt with that shit for years about how bad the PS3 was. It was expensive. It was shoving shit down your throat. So yeah, we want to do it. The difference here is that Microsoft, or Xbox, I will say, because there are Xbox fans and there's Xbots, they didn't have any ammunition to throw at us for a whole generation. The only thing that they could throw at us is Game Pass repeatedly. They would even go as far as to lie and say that their Xbox Live was giving them, what was it? It was giving them dedicated servers. So much shit was wrong. PlayStation Plus came out the gate giving you 2 games a month, part of the subscription, and allows you to watch Netflix without the fucking PlayStation Plus. And you can play free-to-play games on a PS4 without a subscription. Whereas none of those things were viable or was capable. You couldn't do it until 2 years ago. That shit's wild to me when I hear people talk crazy and wonder why PlayStation fans are acting the way that they act. We dealt with, I'm saying we, because I don't know who's what, but I can tell you for me, I dealt with that shit for like 7 years. I couldn't even buy shit without hearing stupid fucking fanboy dribble. It was annoying. So here we are now. People are still salty after 10, 15 years of something that they should go directly to Microsoft and complain about. Instead of you saying that your games are trash and have nothing to back it up. Oh, I don't like Horizon Forbidden West. It's a Ubisoft game. It's a Ubisoft game. Demon Souls, that's just a reskin. Oh, Returnal only sold 1 million. Nigga, where's your games? I hope you ain't going to claim Elden Ring because we have that. We got Elden Ring. So what happened? You getting mad at somebody else. You don't have any ammunition. And that's where the crazy dynamics is happening. They don't have ammunition. So now they're scratching and surviving for a fucking W, which is Game Pass to them. They don't even give a fuck what's in Game Pass typically. And again, I have to distinguish Xbox and Xbox fans. We're talking about Xbox rather. That's who we're talking about. Because those motherfuckers don't even play any games. They play nothing. You know what they play? Twitter. Twitter is what they play.
I mean, to be fair, mate, the Xbox are probably so salty because they're too busy having fucking Phil Spencer's dick in the mouth. You know what I mean?
Bro, they give the illest dick. They gag on that shit and then act like that everything's fine.
Yep. They take that shit all the way back to the throat, mate. They cup the balls, stroke the shaft, and they fucking swallow his gravy.
That's
they love that shit.
And they are glad, and they are so glad for it. It's crazy to me that you can sit there. What they do most of the time is to scour the interwebs, looking at PlayStation shit. That's all they do. They go onto Twitter and quote and cut out pieces of spaces to make content while they wait for content. You have more content that you've made than what your favorite plastic box has presented to you. You're so focused on some of these motherfuckers are elaborate with the content that they have because they don't have games. Like for me, I like doing these spaces. I love it. I love talking with my fellow gamers. But guess what? After 2 hours, I'm on my PlayStation. That's it. And I wasn't getting any sleep lately. That's why I have a raspy ass voice right now. My vocal cords is tired. Yelling that shit. I need they need rest. That's what they need. But I love talking. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing about this. It's not about what's better. We're just getting, as a PlayStation fan, we're getting content. Whether you like it or not, whether it's sold 1 million or not, we're still getting content while you're hoping that you can get a W by claiming that Game Pass is a W for you. Whether you get games in that or not, you don't have games now. You fucking championed the acquisition of Activision. And Activision was just going to release games on both consoles anyway. Just to say that we have more developers than you. I don't understand the mentality. It sounds fucking crazy. Back when I was younger, I'm 37 years old. When I was younger back in the day, we used to talk about who has what better. And we will all play. I never had an N64, but guess what? I played Smash Brothers. And guess what? Although I liked PlayStation, I bought a fucking GameCube. It was my preferred thing. I played Resident Evil 4 in that bitch. And I played fucking what was it? Smash Brothers Melee. And I never once said it was a worse console. I just had my preferred place. You never heard me say that GameCube is a bad console. Ever. You will never have that. You will never catch me. You will never catch me saying that shit. Because it isn't. I can say the same thing about Switch. And my issue with Switch is not, I'm not trying to compare it to a new, like these generation consoles. I just want a more powerful console. That's all. That's all. You know what I'm saying?
The Switch 2, from what I understand, is meant to be, if I recall, PS3 style graphics or something like that. It's meant to have be a lot more powerful, so they can do a lot more with it. No idea when it'll get released. You'd have to speak to someone who actually knows more about Nintendo with that one.
It ain't going to get released. I'm sorry, it's not. How can I put it? They're not going to release it anytime soon until the Switch stops selling. Because the second they announced the Switch 2 is the second that the Switch 1 would stop, would slow down in sales. It wouldn't make sense for them as a business standpoint to announce something coming on the horizon. It doesn't make any sense for that. Now, what kind of graphics would it have? You can't. The problem with technology, handheld technology, isn't the chips. The problem with handheld technology is the fucking lithium batteries. You can't. You're limited off rip because of the batteries. If it's portable, you want to have that shit last for at least 4 hours. So you can't be too powerful. Regardless of the matter, all a nigga wants is a better frame rate and better resolution. And that's achievable. You don't need to have ray tracing or fucking shaders all over the fucking place. So long as you have good resolution and great performance, I don't really give a fuck. And Nintendo isn't pushing the envelope like that anyway. They push the envelope in other ways. I go to my PlayStation to have the developers of first party utilize that system to its max. And I like cinematic experiences. I do. I've always liked cinematic experiences, and PlayStation has always been about cinematic experiences. Look at Metal Gear Solid with the first one on PlayStation 1 with the cinematic fucking cutscenes. And then you had the anime with the Final Fantasy, right? It was all, you had Tomb Raider with the epic. You're from the UK, right? Right?
I am.
You remember how big Tomb Raider was back then?
Oh yeah, we all loved them pyramid tits, mate.
Man, my eyes had DLSS upscaling technology. That shit would add extra detail that never existed. Nigga, I saw ripples on areolas that never happened. There was nothing. It never existed. But I saw it.
I'm only laughing because it's so true, mate. It's so true.
I remember playing Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation, which was the fourth entry, and you could see her ass cheeks, right? And the game was really good. Like, it wasn't like they were just, just visuals. It was a damn good game. But I was like, is that a thong? You can look at it today.
Yeah,
I said, look at them rendering the thong and shit like that. I was like, oh shit. That man, I'm gonna tell you right now, White. Here's a secret. Since you see me around the Twitter, Tomb Raider is my favorite game of all time.
I can agree with that. I can appreciate that.
Not because of the tits or sexuality or whatever the case is. I really legitimately like action adventures. I wanted so badly for PlayStation to have a 3D environment that you can manipulate the camera, but I did not want N64. And when I finally was given that, it felt like a real adventure game. It was rare that a mechanic such as a flare in Tomb Raider 2 could really work in immersion. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I can't see anything. Let me get my flare real quick. And I'm like, oh, wow, it was a secret area. It felt like actual discovery. You know what I'm saying? It just was a really good game. I fucking love those games. It is my favorite game of all time. Tomb Raider 1 actually is my favorite game of all time.
So what's your opinion on like the games like Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of the Tomb Raider?
They're not Tomb Raider games.
Fair enough.
They're not Tomb Raider games because the exploration is going. Laura's character is completely dismantled. She's a different person altogether. Like, she was a true feminist back in the day. She was about it. She didn't go online and talk about something. I need a man that makes 6 figures. She was like, bitch, I got 6 figures. I got 7 figures. Actually, I really don't need a man. And in terms of the sexual shit, me jumping off a cliff and landing, that gets my pussy wet. Not a dick. That's how she was acting. And you know what? She wasn't rude about it either. She wasn't saying that men was horrible. She just said, shit, I don't need one. I like what I like right now. Bitch, I'm a world star gymnast that can do backflips for days. I got that shit. I got an ass and titties, and them shits are not fucking augmented with science. These are my all natural double Ds. And I got a fat ass and a waist. And I'm smart like a motherfucker. I got PhDs out the ass. I really don't need a nigga. That's how she was acting. And I like that shit, yo. I respect it. That was my favorite fucking game of all time. My second favorite game of all time is actually Shadow of the Colossus.
Now that is a good game. I do like Shadow of the Colossus.
Any adventure game, I'm all for. I don't give a fuck what it is. I am all for all adventure games as my shit, or platformers. But what do you got to say about all this? The origins of console wars and the fact that back in the day we used to actually compare games. Now, because Microsoft made the decisions that they made, there's no comparing games. What do you have to say about that? Am I right? Am I wrong?
I'd say you're kind of right, because obviously, I until I came fully onto Twitter, the only forms of console warring I'd seen were on Facebook, and it was just stupid rhetoric, like the fucking 12 teraflop argument and all this lot, and then the screenshots of all the relevant information. And at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck about the specs of the console. I never have done. All I care about is what games that console's got, or what that console will bring to me, essentially. And they just could never understand why your PlayStation, there's much better games on Xbox. Again, that's your opinion. Just because my opinion's different from yours, don't start insulting me over a plastic fucking box. But I don't recall any console warring shit like this before the PS3 era, because before that it was genuinely, like you said, you'd be going around to your mate's house and you would genuinely compare games. You would be like, oh well, that game's all right, innit? And but it does this a bit better on this game. One's Xbox, one's PlayStation. There was none of this bullshit. Oh well, you're a fucking bot and you're a pony. You're part of the Pegasus Nation and you're just a dickhead. There was none of that. It was just, so you enjoy games, I guess we can be friends.
I had so many friends. By the way, what's going on, Fatal? And what's going on, Devil Shoot? I see y'all guys on YouTube. I have friends that we did not play. It never cross-pollinated in terms of the type of consoles that we had. But guess what? If I wanted my Nintendo fix, I'd go to my friend John's house. John and Sean's house. If they wanted their fix, they would go to my house in terms of the PlayStation fix. That was pretty much it. And like I said before, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I honestly think that what's going on is literally Microsoft facilitated that type of behavior. You know what I'm saying? That's my whole point. Mr. Hart, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How's everything?
Yo, what's going on, man? I'm glad to speak to you finally.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of everything that 90%, possibly 100% of what you just said. So yeah, listen, the whole console war thing has grown, and unfortunately, it has taken a dark turn, because you see stuff only in recent times where people started flashing guns and stuff like that, and that had to stop. That had to come out, like, of the whole conversation completely. Everybody shut that down. Well, actually, I blocked the people that were acting like that. So I don't really care what side you're from. If you got to go to violence, if you got to go to berating people and all this other stuff, and trying to get on people personally, that's there's no space for that in the gaming industry. There's no space for that in console wars. I'll say this. I do joke around and I do laugh at people. I will joke somebody out of the damn room if I have to, but I will only do it on the premise of a game or the game industry. I won't go personal until people start going there, and then there's a point at which I just cut it off. I'm just like, nah, I can't do this. Nah, that's it.
What's going on, Guap? People are super sensitive, man. Like what Chocolate was saying, just super fucking sensitive. Nigga, relax.
Exactly. Have we? And I think recently everybody has had enough of old dude from what's his name, PC gamer. That's always, he leans Xbox. He leans to Xbox.
No, it's Alex.
Yep. People are starting to finally come after his ass. So
he has so much shit to say. Like he built up his whole YouTube channel on
Just remember though, guys. Just remember that an RPG means that you have to play a role.
Bro.
Just remember that.
Yeah,
That's a
where
key
the
fact.
heck did this whole conversation come from?
Yo,
Like,
I don't.
seriously.
He wanted to jump into the mix, man. They see the attention. Look. I'm gonna say something that's really controversial. Fuck it. I don't give a fuck at this point in time. We need to have a little bit more like nigga callous up, callous the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? I'm sick of this shit. A lot of men are acting very feminine in their emotions. Quick to block people.
Game, don't beat around the bush, man. Just call it what it is. There's a lot of grown-ass men who are acting like little fucking bitches.
Like, here's the thing. You know what? I didn't like Elden Ring. I felt like Bloodborne's better. I'm blocking this motherfucker. How dare you have an opinion? What? You know, like, it's weirdos. Like, you know, you super fuck. I didn't like The Last of Us Part 2. How could you? You are an incel. You don't even know why I didn't like it, though. How could you? You just don't like the LGBTQ community. How could you say such things? Oh, what? Oh, Abby's too much women for you? Is that what it is? No, I just didn't like the combat. No, you didn't like it. I'm like, oh boy, man, I can't deal with this. I can't. You can't have an opinion. Like nowhere. Yo, Ken, what's going on, bro?
What's good, man?
Yo, what you gotta say about all this?
I just gotta say, Dude Raider is better than Tomb Raider, man. So, Dude Raider.
Who?
Who the hell is Dude Raider?
Uncharted. The guy that really doesn't explore tombs. He just walks in a very beautiful hallway, and at the end of the hallway is a trinket, and then that's the end of the game.
Uncharted is just the better Tomb Raider. That's what it is.
Yo, you see what we're doing. You see what we're doing. Me and Ken, we can have disagreements and fuck around with this. You know what I'm saying? Without me saying I'm going to shoot you. You feel me? Like, you know what I'm saying?
True, like, I mean, I'm quite offended by what he's just said.
He's from the UK. Don't you know that in the UK they got a street that's called Laura Croft Lane? Where the bitches just be standing there shaking their asses. You didn't know that?
Exactly, man. How dare you offend my UK streets?
Yo, I'm gonna have Drake come over and fix the place up.
Yeah, you hear that accent, right? He sound real civilized. How dare you? How dare you?
One of the Kingsmen.
Yo, he thou shalt not pass. Yo, his hair was blowing in the wind when he said that shit. I hope that if there's a picture of you, I know your hair was blowing, nigga. When you said
that is a picture of me, man. That is a picture of me, and my hair is pretty damn fucking long, unfortunately.
Yo, I'm gonna have Drake come over there and slip and break the whole building.
No, I know, right? Wait, what's his what do you call it? His trademark. Oh, crack. That's what he does. Now, I bet you White Chocolate listens to Megadeth, don't you?
I do. I actually do, man. I love my heavy metal.
I know. I have a friend that has the same mannerisms as you, but he's from Texas. He doesn't have the awesome accent. You know what I'm saying? But I can tell.
Well, yeah, I mean, you say that I sound sophisticated and everything, mate, and yet I technically come from the slums of the UK. You know, we're the part of the UK that the rest of the UK don't like.
I don't know. When you speak, I just hear you by you're near a fireplace, right? And you have like a desk, and you have like the fucking the vial of ink and the feather, like you writing shit down, like scribbling that shit.
And a tobacco pipe hanging out my mouth and everything. Yeah,
you got a pipe, bro. You got a little tobacco pipe.
UK people make everything sound smart, yo. I'm gonna pick my belly button. It's like belly
button. Anyway, what you guys say about all this though, for real?
On a side note, the whole UK thing. The only experience I have from the UK is my cousins, Mercedes and Dennis. I used to sing this song Dennis the Menace, and she used to always say, "He is not a menace. He is not." This is exactly how she sounded. He's not a menace, and then I'm gonna cut it up right there because that shit right there always had me laughing, dying laughing.
Yo, I swear, yo, I don't know, man. I used to, yo, I was so stupid. This is how deep it goes. When I told you I'm actually in, I should go to the UK soon, actually, when everything is cleared the fuck up. But like, I was so enamored with the UK and just that type of culture. I was like, I know they don't speak a different language in the UK, but I need to be sophisticated. I'm gonna learn French, and that's what I decided. I was like, then I could blend the fuck in. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
Yeah.
I swear to God, yo, I was going to be like, Mademoiselle, excusez-moi la toilette. They were like, nigga, this is the wrong country. It's over there. You know what I mean? I just want to sound, because I'm black and my voice is too strong. You know what I mean? Like they get as aggressive. You know, I'd be like, you know where the bus is? They'd be like, oh. You scared me, mate. You know, I just don't, I don't want all that. I want that smoke. I want that smoke show, yo. Ken, what you guys say about this before we go into this Japanese market nonsense?
The whole origins of the console war thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear everything, but you know, I do. From what I heard, I think you're right, man. You know what I mean? A lot of this shit started back in the fucking PS3 and 360 era, man. And I feel like nowadays, man, people are just fucking grabbing onto whatever the fuck they can, man. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's even to the point where it's like, it's not even fucking about games anymore, man. You know what I mean? It's about like fucking everything besides games, features and sales numbers and every fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like anything that you can
tools, man. It's about them tools. The tools.
It's about the tools.
Exactly.
Fucking,
where the hell this conversations come from, man?
Yo, because their narrative was like shot, man. It was shot to hell, man. It was look at this. If y'all see this on YouTube, right? Somebody has Project Eve. I can't wait for that shit. And actually, we might as well go right into that fucking topic, right? About this fucking Japanese thing. So there was a conversation I had, right? And this was a very simple conversation. I thought it was simple enough. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, okay. I feel like the Japanese market is kind of struggling. You know what I'm saying? And people was like, oh, how dare you? You can't say it's struggling. It's making all sorts of fucking games. This is crazy. And I wanted to kind of share something with you guys, which to me, it sounds crazy for somebody to literally not understand the context. Am I correct in saying, right? Am I correct in saying that in Japan, the console market has shrunk? Is that correct? Is that factual or erroneous?
I wouldn't know. I'm not from Japan, but I'm hearing a lot about that right now. So
I was literally about to say the exact same thing. That's not what I'm hearing, but I wouldn't know personally.
So the reason why I say this, right? This is the reason why I say this is because Nintendo had to combine their handheld and their console, their home console, because of the shrinking market. Is that factual or is that incorrect?
That's interesting. That might be correct.
Why else do you not have a full-on console in Japan?
That's a good question.
And I say this.
Wait, what was the statement that you made?
Nintendo had to combine their handheld and home consoles market together because of the shrinking of the market. As a matter of fact, the DS sold 155 million or 150 million at that generation. And I told people when I used to be a member of NeoGAF, I said that shit, they'll be lucky to get PSP's numbers, which was 80 million. And we
talked about that before.
Yeah, I was laughed out of the fucking website. And guess what happened? the fucking 3DS only sold around 80 million. And the reason why, this is why Nintendo decided to combine those two. Because when they tried to make a home console, i.e. the Wii U, that shit failed for many reasons. You know what I'm saying? And the DS didn't show half, it sold half essentially. And you could tell by the games of the top 10, there's only a certain amount of games that sell. Not even the Japanese are trying to sell to themselves. Nintendo is the only outlier because of their fan base.
And didn't they try to bring back the spiritual successor to the 3D portion of the 3DS by trying to do cardboard VR?
Well, I mean, they always do like weird things with toys and shit like that. So that's that's them. But I got into a conversation and people were really upset about that statement. Show me the proof, nigga. I was like, okay, now let me go over here and pull up a graph. And Nintendo serves as 47.5% as of end of 2020 in Japan. And the next person in line is Konami at 6.5. I asked the guy, how is the market for the Japanese market doing as a whole? Well, you got to count Nintendo in it as well. I'm like, I'm talking about the diversity of everything. The diversity of everything. Because Nintendo makes very specific games. Oh, Japanese, the RPG sell just as much, if not more. What about Elden Ring? Nigga, you know I'm talking about. You know I'm talking about traditional RPGs.
They getting defensive over there.
And I'm like, you acting like, oh, these Sony fans. I was like, hold the fuck up now. They're not Sony fans. You know what I mean? I had to give my grandma a steak. I was like, they ain't Sony fans. I want more Japanese games. And the Japanese are afraid of making their own fucking game because the Japanese are not purchasing their own games unless it's a very specific game.
Facts.
You don't got the diversity that we used to have. We had all sorts of shit. As a matter of fact, the Japanese ran that fucking market for 3 generations. I'm sorry, excuse me, 5 generations. After the Atari died and then the NES came out, they were just running shit consistently up into the PS3. There was all sorts of games that came out. And what disrupted, I talked to Magnificent Black, and I talked to Jemiah. What changed is Grand Theft Auto in the sandbox era. And the way that they make games, they refuse to go with the times because they're traditionalists. They don't want to change. Yeah, go on, man.
So essentially, Sony giving open world gaming a chance was what changed everything because Nintendo did not believe in open world games. It was just like, yo, Mario is it. And Sony was like, listen, Mario is not going to be it forever. So what you saw was the emergence of CD-based games, which started with Sega, but it really became popular with Sony and open world gaming.
It's crazy that that's not known. Like, I understand that people there's people that are enamored with the Japanese culture. I remember a while ago, I hated Western games. The only one that I would play was Tomb Raider. The rest of it was Japanese platformers. That was it. That's what I liked back in the day. You know what I'm saying? I thought that American games were trash. And slowly but surely, they kept stepping up their fucking game. They kept stepping it up. You know what I'm saying? And Japan refused to inject their culture inside their games. And if they did, it was so obscured. It was almost like indie games. The type of games that we have now are borderline indie games. I was looking for a high production value Japanese game. And it took so long for that to fucking happen. By the time it happened, the Western market already took over with these crazy ass production valued games. And they overtook them. Period. There's numbers on my Twitter, which you can see that's tagged in this shit. You can see the shrinkage of the fucking market in Japan. They're not buying games like they used to. They are using their cell phone. And then someone said I was cherry picking. I needed to include cell phone games. Nigga, do you play cell phone games? Because if you don't play cell phone games, we can't have a discussion. That's the funny thing. Yeah, go on.
That's the thing. The cell phone market, they try to literally, and that's why you see why Apple did this whole thing where they cut off Game Pass and all that Xbox stuff from being on Apple iPhone and all that stuff. Only thing you can do is the remote play stuff, but they can't put xCloud on it. They had to work around that. And Apple was like, look, y'all are in direct competition with my Apple Arcade, my games that we sell on here. So y'all got to find another way to do whatever you got to do, but you can't do it through us. And they want their market. The cell phone companies want their gaming market now.
Well, not even just that. The Japanese are moving to cell phones. And riddle me this, right? Since motherfuckers want to sit there and say that I'm erroneous because Elden Ring freakishly sold 12 million in a month. That's not what the other one did. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
You know, there was a lot of reasons as to why, and that's another podcast. But I can tell you right now, why did Konami abandon their console games and went to those pachinko or whatever fucking games? Why are arcade cabinets closing down in Japan? Why don't you see traditional games, full-fledged games that we used to have nowadays? How come fighting games are not coming out as full games? They're partial games.
That market was huge. I don't know why who could ever stop that?
Because the Japanese are not buying their own games. And you know what? Every other market wanted to, at the time, play an American or Western type game. They wanted to live out their power fantasy. They wanted to steal cars, you know what I'm saying? They wanted to slay dragons and shit like that. The Japanese have a crazy market if they utilize their strengths, which is their culture. That's why manga and anime still is banging to this day. It's like the Japanese are afraid of making a game. You get piss poor games or games that are kind of like quasi. They're halfway trying to be big budget, halfway not. You're not progressing your game philosophy and design. The Western game development or game design has completely evolved. Completely. They are full-fledged. They evolved. Whether you want to call it Ubisoft or not, right? They evolved from where it is. And that's why, I mean, you can look at Fortnite or whatever the case is, it's still considered an evolution. The Japanese refuse to change their philosophy. And the only company that's changing their philosophy right now is Square Enix and Capcom.
Probably Capcom. Yeah, because a lot of those recent Japanese games are catering more to the Western audience nowadays than they are to the Japanese market.
And maybe that's how it needs to happen. Maybe a lot of these philosophies will change if they look at what Capcom and Square Enix are doing.
But Capcom still is keeping their same. They're keeping their energy. They're keeping their same culture within their games, whether you like it or not. The type of game that Capcom made, they keep it. Look at Devil May Cry and how wonderfully quirky that game is. You know what I'm saying?
But Devil May Cry didn't sell very well across all platforms. You know what I mean? It didn't. It sold about 2 million, maybe 3 million copies across every single platform, which was kind of crazy to me because the game itself is incredible. It looked incredible,
amazing.
Too. Yeah.
You want to know? You want to know why it didn't? You want to know why it didn't sell well?
Why?
Because of what Capcom did in the past with their Devil May Cry 4 that they gave to Ninja Theory.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
They tarnished their name by doing what they did. They gave it to a Western developer. Like they couldn't do it themselves. They couldn't be bothered by doing it themselves. So they gave it to somebody else out of what I don't really know. But you know what actually succeeded? And they kind of kept that Western type MMO grind, but still kept the whole Japanese, you know what I mean, grind as well, is Monster Hunter. They spent decades building that shit up.
Here's this itching. I heard some Capcom slander.
No, actually, it's nothing but good. It's good. It's good.
No, I was fucking with you. No, but I just wanted to. But I heard you say Devil May Cry 4. It wasn't Devil May Cry 4. It was the. It was just called Devil May Cry, I believe.
Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry.
They tried to rebrand it. It was Devil May Cry straight up.
I appreciate that correction.
No problem.
You know, but you know,
nigga, let's get it right.
Never include or lump in cell phone games if you don't play cell phone games as a means to correct yourself or a means to prove your point. We all know that the gaming industry is growing, but what's causing the growth is the question. Because if you don't play cell phone games, shut the fuck up.
I was gonna say, man, like what they probably don't really feel a need to evolve their game design, man, because a lot of what sells over there isn't high production. Games. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you know, smaller indie games, cell phone games, those traditional JRPG games, stuff like that. You know what I mean? You know, and even some of this more Western style stuff is not really selling that well. It's great, like what they did with Capcom and Devil May Cry 5 and even RE8. You know what I'm saying? I just, by the way, I finished that game today.
What did RE8 sell?
I don't know. That one I'm not sure.
I know the seventh one was pretty decent. The eighth one was pretty good. But then again, like I said, there's certain sentimentalities that they could definitely grow with the way that they make games. And I think that what they ended up doing was trying to make cell phone games that didn't work out to the best of their they didn't work the way they wanted it to. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what ended up happening. And then they were like, well, we can still do traditional because, again, with traditional, it's a certain level of guaranteed money. But look what happens, right? The second that a Japanese studio decides to incorporate some Western sentimentalities, you sell 12 million.
Fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. But on that note, guys, I'm out.
All right, Mr. Hart.
All right, yo.
Appreciate you being there.
Definitely. All right,
peace,
y'all.
Man.
One.
Peace, man.
Peace. Man.
But that's all I'm saying, though. So, White Chocolate, what you guys say about all this, man? Do you think that is there something that they could do? Or am I wrong in saying what I'm saying?
When it comes to like the Japanese games and stuff like that, mate, I'm genuinely not the best person to ask because I don't play JRPGs. You know, the mobile games I do play, you know, they wouldn't really count as part of this conversation. So I am genuinely not the best person to be asking that question to. That's why I've stayed quiet.
You actually said that before about the games. What were you going to say, Ken?
That's probably why Sony is making some of the moves that they are nowadays, because they probably know that you know, the Japanese people are not purchasing as much you know, some of these more Western style games as opposed to their more traditional like mobile style games. You know, you see that they're making a lot more investments into the mobile scene and even the PC scene. You know what I'm saying? Because PC is pretty big on the Eastern side. You know what I mean? China and, you know, Japan as well. So
I will say this, right? And this is not to slide Japanese games. Some like Shadow of the Colossus is another game that is literally the pinnacle of Japanese design. Like all of its quirkiness and everything is super anime, but still being really. You can't get any better than that. To me, of course, that's an opinion. What is it? Inquisitive, yo. What's going on, man? Did I say your name right?
Yeah. How's it going, guys?
What's going on? So a little bit of discourse. Go on, man.
A little bit. So I thought I'd bring this into the conversation. When it comes to like games in Japan versus the rest of the world, there's something that I think a lot of people are forgetting that a lot of people who play games are the working class salaryman type of people, not just not just kids. And one of the more popular games among those types of people are visual novels. And to this day, I'd like to ask, outside of the very niche indie developed type of stuff, how many Western studios have actually made a visual novel?
I can't answer that question. If I really can't. I don't know.
I mean, you're talking about like the Telltale games?
No, not Telltale games. I'm talking about like actual visual novels where you're reading text and you make choices throughout the game and whatnot. It's a genre that has a lot of releases. You look on Steam, there's almost hundreds and hundreds of visual novel games. It's a
the Japanese make?
Yeah, it's a popular genre. And I'm noticing that, I don't think for the life of me I've ever seen one made by a Western studio. At least not in a traditional Western style or cultural style, if you know what I mean.
So what are you trying to say?
Well, you're saying that Japan's market struggles, and I'm just saying that, visual novels are actually quite a popular genre that are popular outside of Japan as well as within Japan.
See, I want to say this, right? I think there was that one game that Sony banned or changed her blood into like oil, it looked like, because of censorship. Is that considered a Japanese novel?
That's a little vague. I couldn't really tell you.
It was like this anime type game. Ken, do you know what it is?
What was it, like the 13? It was 13 Sentinels, I think it was. Is that what you're talking about?
It was the one where people were like, Sony's censoring it. They made her blood black because the characters were committing suicide or something like that.
Oh, dude, like, don't get me started. Sony has committed a lot of heresy with a lot of stuff. I am not gonna defend them on that ground. They've got things to answer for.
I'm not defending that company at all. But what I will say is I will point out what is good. See, my whole point, our MO, is not to defend anybody. I just want better gaming for my fucking self. You know what I would want, Inquisitor?
What's that?
I would want a Parasite Eve 4. That's what I would want.
Who made Parasite Eve?
Square Enix or Squaresoft.
Yeah.
I would love to have that. You know what I would also want too? I would also want a not Zone Enders. Well, yeah, that too. Zone Enders 3 would be fucking badass. But what is it? Gears.
Gears.
What is it called? Xenogears.
Xenogears. Okay. Have you ever played Xenosaga?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, you should give it a try. But as far as Zone of the Enders games, like I think mech games or Gundam style games have almost been done to death, and people are kind of tired of that. Zone of the Enders was an exception because it was not only made with Hideo Kojima as a director, but it was a very unique take on the mech genre.
Well, you had what do you call that game again? Omega Boost. Which was very
Omega Boost, Armored Core, Front Mission. Actually, who here's played Front Mission? Hands up. Who's played Front Mission? Any of the Front Mission games?
I know I haven't.
Okay,
I haven't either.
Okay, well, I have Front Mission 4 for the PlayStation 2 on my.
I see it in my head. Like I see the jewel case. So I don't know what was going on with that. My whole point, Inquisitor, right?
Yeah.
Is this? I feel like when you're on social media, you have to provide such a precise context, or else it just gets taken completely out of context.
Oh yeah,
right?
Anyone who disagrees with you or has the intent of trying to put you down will find any loophole in what you say, even if you're trying to use a very not vague but a very generalized term. You know what I mean?
It's very frustrating when you when you deal with people like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because here's the thing. We only have certain amount of characters to actually express what we want to express. So we make anybody was going to make a generalization. So it's when I say Japanese bless you.
Sorry.
I say, no problem. When I say Japanese market, I'm talking about the traditional sense, the stuff that we are used to. You know what I'm saying? And one could argue, hey, I'm talking about, there's the, the visual novels and stuff like that. But how much does it sell exactly, Inquisitor? Is it in the millions?
That I couldn't say.
Like,
I know it's this is a terrible way to compare it. And I know people are going to smash me for this, but consider it like the comic book industry, where Demon Slayer has apparently outsold like the entire Western comic book industry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it really comes down to taste, preference, and really the kind of culture that whatever person lives in. If you live in the kind of culture where you're busy, you don't get much time to work, then visual novels and dating sims, for example, are probably going to be more popular to you. If you're a person who works at, say, like a warehouse job and you feel like smashing some heads in after the end of the day because you probably had some beef with someone, you're probably going to play Gears of War, God of War, one of those kinds. It's hard to say. Saying that Japanese games are not popular outside of Japan, I think, is very disingenuous, considering that we probably don't even realize how many games actually come out of Japan.
It would be disingenuous. You're absolutely right, Inquisitor, but I never said that.
No, but you're asking why the Japan market struggles outside of Japan.
Struggling and what you just said are totally different. When I say struggle, let me just provide context with that, right? Okay. This is what I mean. Like, it's very hard to really express what you really, really, really want. You know what I'm saying? Because of the obvious. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have enough characters. And even if you did, no one's going to read that shit. People read headlines and then extrapolate a whole thing from headlines. So it doesn't, you know what I'm saying?
No,
they don't
absolutely.
even bother reading it.
So
it's like,
bro. So what exactly do you mean by saying that the Japan market is struggling then?
There are some games, right?
Yeah.
That we'll never get to see. It will never see the light of day again. Or it is, like, for instance, Shenmue, right? It's a crazy, example, but Shenmue, it had to get crowdfunded to have a sequel because they were so afraid to make another one. You know what I mean? Because the Japanese don't, the way, if you look at the Japanese sales, the what do you call that shit again? Media creates or whatever, their sales, you could clearly see, I followed that shit since 2005. And those games will have games that will sell 100,000 every week for 4 months. You would get a game, if it's not Monster Hunter or a Nintendo game, it will sell maybe 100,000. And then the next week will be 80,000. And then it'll be 15,000. It's clearly some sort of major shift. And we're talking about traditional gaming. We're not talking about I mean just the console market when I say what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because everybody can sit there and say that the industry is booming, but I don't play cell phone games. That's the problem. I don't play it. I don't, and traditionally, that's what I'm referring to. These games are not selling like they used to, is why I'm saying they're struggling. These games are on every platform and can only muster 2-3 million, maybe 5. And you get games like Assassin's Creed, which will just demolish it. And one can say, well, that's a Western game. You know what I'm saying? And it has Western studios are much bigger. Okay, well, about Sony? It's on one platform, and you'll get games that sells 10, 15, 20 million. You know what I'm saying? My whole point is not to say that Japanese games are shit. They're not. I just want them to be what they used to be. They were so bleeding edge. They made everything look like shit back then.
Yeah, well, let's point at. I mean, again, this is gonna be controversial, but let's point at Konami and the decisions they've made.
Yep. Why? Well, let me ask you this: why did they make that decision?
Well, because the previous head of Konami wanted to focus more on revenue than actual game sales. He wanted to focus on making as much money as possible, so they switched to making mainly pachinko machines.
Mm-hmm.
Now, pachinko, gambling, all that stuff, popular in Japan. We hate it because it takes what we used to love and basically rapes it of any of its value. But a lot of it comes down to business decisions, and we're seeing that with the same thing with sports games in the West. Mm-hmm. Look at FIFA, look at Madden. We're seeing a lot of gambling and gotcha bullshit happening in those games as well. It's not like that kind of problem isn't exclusive to Japan. It happens in almost everywhere, and I'm really sad to say this, but look at CD Projekt Red. Like they were known for making some of the best, one of the best series based on Polish folklore, The Witcher, right?
Right.
Then they switch over to a cyberpunk game. Everyone's excited because they know what CD Projekt Red's resume is, and then we had the 2077 debacle. Pardon me. I don't think Japan is the. I don't think Japan should be singled out in this particular sense. Yes, there's lots of stuff that they made, and a lot of that stuff isn't being remade or brought back because people's tastes have changed. New series have come out. They continue with the new series. There's a whole bunch of stuff that exists now that never existed like 10 or 20 years ago. Like My Hero Academia, that wasn't a thing back then. It's a thing now, and it's really popular. Demon Slayer is a thing now. It wasn't a thing back then. A lot of the series that we want to come back, I'm sure there's a lot of passionate people who would love to have them come back, even in Japan. But the thing is, what's popular now is going to get more attention than what was popular 20 years ago.
Well, that's my point, because there's this stagnant attitude that the Japanese have with their games. They don't want to change it. They don't want to follow the trends and put their own spin on it. You have Zelda, and it paid off immensely for putting their games in open world. Nintendo or Japanese developers never wanted to do open world games. I would love to see an open world game.
Have you not? I'm trying to rack my brain around here. The thing about open world games is that, so when it comes to Japan, and I think, was it Miyamoto who said that he wanted to focus on games that were fun? And the best way to make a game fun is to make it engaging. And the problem with open world games is that it's very easy to become lethargic about everything that's in the world, right? You got so much to do. You're trying to make up your mind on what you want to do, and then sometimes you just get bored trying to search for that one thing, or you're trying to look down a checklist of things to do. Whereas these short, linear, smaller games are much more straightforward, and there's like a reason to want to beat whether it's a high score or you want to beat the story. It's very straightforward, to the point. Open world games seem to be like a giant ball and giant checklist, giant ball and chain to your mind when it comes to beating a game. Because people in Japan, like if you go to an arcade in Japan, it is cutthroat skill. People in the arcades, they perfect the art of beating a game to the point where that is their Bushido, okay? That is their samurai way. Whereas in the West, we look at games as more as, well, I just want to fuck around in a virtual world. I don't really care whether I do good or not.
Let me say this. They essentially do that with Animal Crossing, just a type of open world game. They just don't want to go to full Monty. The same thing when it comes to the Pokemon game. Do you know how fucking crazy a fully realized Pokemon game would be? Not the shit that they just delivered. It's to me, they don't want to, and like I said, this is like a part 2 to what I said last week. They don't want to invest it. They are afraid of losing a shit ton of money, or something is going on. This is not to say, yes, times have changed. And I'm not saying that the games need to be Western. What I am saying is that they need to put their heart into it again, because I don't feel like they are. Even in Japan, like I said before, the Japanese don't even want Japanese games. They want specific games on their cell phone because most of the people, as you adequately put, are working class people. They don't have time to be wandering around unless it's a very curated experience. But the Western people function differently. We want escapism, essentially. And they just function differently.
Exactly. It's like I said, it comes down to very different styles of culture. Our work ethics are very different compared to what it is over there.
And that's why I said, why is the Japanese market struggling outside of Japan? I say it's struggling because they can't manage to do 10 million unless you're Nintendo over here.
Well, on that note, let me ask you, why do Nintendo games sell so well?
I think, and I've thought about this shit, they have been so consistent with their fan base that it's mostly their fan base that are selling. Now, by extension, their games are much easier. Their art style, which is very important, is easier to digest. Whereas it doesn't really age. Like you got the Monster Hunter things. I'm not Monster Hunter, I'm sorry, the Animal Crossing things. It's not a stylized, hyper realistic situation. They're adorable in a sense.
Okay,
right?
and let me ask you this: how many Nintendo games are actually open world?
If you want to describe the open world games, right? I would say Animal Crossing is considered it should be an open world because that's what it kind of is. Pokemon is, Zelda is.
Okay, well, when you say Pokemon, are we talking about Legend of Arceus, or are we talking about traditional Pokemon games?
The traditional Pokemon games have always been an open world format.
Not necessarily, because the method of progression through a Pokemon game usually puts obstacles in your way until you've reached a certain point or gathered a certain item to get through there.
That's game philosophy, though. But when you got towns, you got an open world that you can explore. The same thing with Zelda. The old Zeldas, you can explore an open environment. That's all I'm stopping at.
That's true.
Open environment.
The Zelda games, absolutely. You could totally explore, like Zelda 1, Link's Awakening. You could totally explore all those areas. I guess when I'm asking how many are open world, what I mean is how many games let you unrestrictedly explore the world.
But then you're changing the definition of what an open world game is. Yeah, that's not my definition.
Well, I'm trying to put a line between what's linear and what's open world. In an open world game, you can supposedly go wherever you want. In a linear game, there's a world to explore, but you have to do certain things in a linear fashion in order to progress and see it.
Well, let's take a look to see what the definition of an open world game is. So let me see here. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you, man.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm not too loud, by the way, am I?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, just want to.
Yeah, you're extremely loud, mate. You need to keep it down a touch.
Sorry.
Let's see here. No, he's sarcastic. Let's see here. Let me see.
I'm using Beats headphones.
World games or definition. Let me see here. In video games, an open world game is Open world is a game mechanic of using a virtual world that the player can explore and approach objectives freely, as opposed to a world with a more linear and structured gameplay. Now, you can hear me, Inquisitor, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Did you hear my definition?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you hear the definition I just said?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay, so you do realize that the way that Grand Theft Auto works, the Grand Theft Auto 3 that everybody knows, they wouldn't let you progress to the other islands until you finished everything there. There's many ways of skinning a cat when it comes to game design. So a big environment that you could do objectives freely or in any order is what I would consider an open world game, which completely fits Animal Crossing, Zelda, and Pokemon. They just curated it a little better.
Okay.
Now, other games like Mario and Mario Kart, right? Those games are obviously not open world. Fine. Okay. They sold a shit ton, but there's reasons for that as well. There was when Animal Crossing, the one that sold 30 million, when it came out, it inadvertently catered to a lot of women, the female demographic. They were adorable. It was easy to fuck with. It's what it is. I don't know what else to say.
No, I agree, but I think what made Animal Crossing more enticing wasn't the fact that it was open world. More so, it was the fact that it felt like it was a virtual town that existed with or without your presence. Like you could go into that town, do some stuff, leave that town, and when you came back, it's like, well, they were living their lives while you were gone.
That's fucking awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. That was the draw of Animal Crossing, was that it was a virtual town that you could be a part of.
It was a living world.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a lot of people try to chase that shit. That's a very hard game design to chase. It is very hard. And that's one of the reasons why Skyrim with that, what is it? Radeon or whatever the fuck it is, AI system. You know, people like that shit. I just feel like the mechanics were just really easy to get into, which is another thing. I feel like a lot of Japanese games from back in the day, their mechanics were easy. It was hard to master the game, but the mechanics, you could just jump right into that bitch because they are coming from a lineage of arcades. You know, you have to make it easy.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Japan games, at least those particular games, really popular, is that it's easy to play, hard to master.
Even with Mario, even to this day, people still play Mario 64. You know what I'm saying? Because it was such a mechanically sound game. But the get into the crux of it before this ends.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to shit on Japanese gaming. And I think that people they misinterpret this shit. Back in the day, Final Fantasy sold like 7-8 million a piece. And they released 3 Final Fantasies on the PS1. And it was only on one platform. Every one of them bitches sold that. Fucking Xenogears sold like 5 million. Parasite Eve sold 4 million. They were just churning out these RPGs and they were banging. They were doing bang jobs. Final Fantasy X, I think, sold like 10 or 12 million. You know what I'm saying? And they were only on one platform. All of these games with these high production values can only muster 5 million. And people tell me that it's not struggling outside of the US.
The gaming market back then on the PS1 days was not nearly as big as it is now.
Then why did they sell as much? You know what it is? It's competition.
Yeah, well, the market's become saturated with so many other, whether it's a copycat or other people creating similar experiences. When you have a lot of people looking at you got a smorgasbord in front of you, right? Let's say that you like eggs, right? And there's like deviled egg, fried eggs, all kinds of eggs right in front of you. And you had one specific kind that you really liked. Now you've got a whole bunch in front of you that are very similar, not exactly the same, but now, like, what are you going to start doing? You're going to start trying other ones, aren't you?
But you know, the funny thing is, I would say that, but Nintendo games seem to grow in popularity over time. With all of the shit that comes out, it's their games that just keep growing in popularity. They wouldn't have dreamed of selling a game that did 20 million or 30 million a piece. They do that consistently now. So what is it that's causing this to happen? And I think the Japanese are behind in the times with their game creation. And people don't want to admit to that shit because they don't want it to go away or they don't want it to change into a Western. I think they should double down on their culture, completely double down on their culture. People don't want a Western game is a Western game is a Western game. I don't want to play a quasi-Western, Eastern type game. I want the full quirkiness. I want the fucking the fucking college girl with the dress, the Sailor Moon shit, the magical girl shit. That's the type of shit I want. Like completely ridiculous shit. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for Forspoken, where her breast size is a B cup. I want them Eves.
I mean,
and short dresses. That's what they do in Japan. And people don't want to
get Senran Kagura. I've got that game for PS4. I got
they censor the shit out of it, Sony. That's another grievance. But here's the thing.
Game, if that's what you like as a game, may I recommend Hentai versus Evil?
Excuse me?
I'll recommend Hentai versus Evil.
Is this a cell phone game?
No, it's an actual console game, mate. It's on PS4.
You
basically play as
Egg, if you really want to work that mojo, go on Steam and download Project Lovecraft.
What I'm saying is this: the Japanese, they have a certain swag to them, and they are afraid. I don't know if it's the market. They are afraid to present that swag. The over the topness, you know what I mean? The fucking Japanese character that looks on top of a city line and pushes his glasses up, and that shit shines, and he says, and all this other shit. I want that shit. I want the fucking Japanese gasp. You know, I like that shit. They don't want to do that. They try to make their games too fucking realistic and too grounded. I want the ridiculousness of it, and I think when you look at a game that's Western, they don't have that shit. Our ridiculousness in the West is fucking Grand Theft Auto. Like overly violent and shit like that, or Mortal Kombat, or whatever the case is. I'm looking for magic, niggas. It's the fucking sparks and particles and shit. That's what I'm looking for. And they're too tame. And they're not setting themselves apart, and they're not cutting edge. And when I say cutting edge, I don't mean cutting edge that you need a crazy ass engine. I mean, most of their games haven't mechanically changed since the PS2 era. Say I'm wrong. What game has changed?
That's a hard question to answer. What do you mean by which game has changed? There's a whole bunch of new games too. Because
has it mechanically changed since the PS2 era, technology wise? Now, I'm not talking about graphics. I mean like ragdoll physics, shit like that.
Well, physics have definitely changed, but are you talking about Formula?
Formula 2, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, Formula hasn't. I mean, from that perspective, Formula hasn't changed for any game since the PS2 days.
Yes, it has.
Example.
Because of the evolution of technology, we had games like Grand Theft Auto appear, or Driver.
Okay, but Grand Theft Auto has existed since the PS1 days, so
it did, but it wasn't in that kind of space, right? So, if you look at what they have, and what I mean, let me just give some more context to the shit. Let me think of a series. Actually, let me open up my old PS2, PS3 fucking CD case. Let me see something here.
Well, let me throw one out there for you. It's a series that I wish was still going on, but it's not anymore. Dot Hack.
Oh shit, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So shooters, right? Shooters actually completely evolved with the jumping and parkour. Like for instance, first-person shooters evolved from just shooting a weapon to being to doing parkour. That's a complete change. You know what I'm saying? You have games like platformers that moved into the linear platformers to a complete open world game like Jak and Daxter. That was a situation. God of War changed from a Devil May Cry type game to, you know, behind the shoulders. We had stuff like PsyOps that had mechanics with, you know, psychic abilities and shit like that. No one has ever done that since. Just looking at the different ones. SOCOM never really existed before that point. That third person type shooter. And you know, it's many iterations of games have changed. You got Tomb Raider, for instance, as well. I was talking about that earlier. They made that into, I don't know what kind of genre you would put Tomb Raider in. It's technically a platformer, but not.
Action survival, I'd say.
You got you got the fucking before Resident Evil 4 changed, and they used to innovate. The reason why Resident Evil kicked ass, Resident Evil 4 could have sold so much more if it was on the PS2. They decided
it was on the PS2.
I know, hear me out. They decided, let me see here. Oh, he just sent me a fucking DM. All right, I'm gonna check that out. They decided, right, to put it on a dying console first, which sucked all the fucking hype out of that game. They released it on the GameCube, and it didn't sell the GameCube, nor did it sold the fucking game. Then they ported it over, which was a worse version, onto the PS2. By that time, Grand Theft Auto and all sorts of shit was out. So that was an error on their end. So they used to innovate. They took Resident Evil, Resident Evil was created out of fucking nothing. There was no game like that. You
actually, Devil May Cry and Resident Evil 4 were actually
the same, and they were supposed to be Devil May Cry was supposed to be Resident Evil 4, and it changed it to that. Yeah, I'm aware of that. But like I said, they created a hack and slash type situation. You know what I mean? That's what back in the day. This is what I mean. That type of shit where they were creating genres. You know what I'm saying? And they were getting handsomely rewarded for it. I think that they're too conservative. I think that they don't want to invest money into it. I know they got the talent. They definitely got the talent. But I'm going to tell you right now, if they don't move in a way, I get that you're making cell phone games, but if people allow them to be mediocre like they are, then what's going to happen for the majority, right? What's going to end up, like, for instance, Elden Ring has a lot of issues, right? And everyone swept that under the rug. Cool. Nope, well, people should have. Yeah.
Are Elden Ring's issues, what are they, mechanical or are they formulaic?
They're mechanical.
So we're talking about just like some stuttering issues, performance issues?
No, the stuttering issues fucks up the mechanic of the game. I mean, you got the PvP situation where you have lag, but also hitboxes are fucked up in that game. You also have the camera that can't keep up with the enemies that they created for this particular game as well. I could go on. I ain't even going to do it. But what I'm saying is Elden Ring could have been better, but they had a modest budget and they worked what they could do within that budget. And you could tell that From Software, if they had money, like if they gave them a shit ton of money instead of spending on that fucking RR, whatever the fuck that nigga's name is, it could have made that game a lot better because they've been doing lore like what they did in Elden Ring. They've been doing lore like this. And to be honest with you, Bloodborne is a deeper lore than those type of games anyway. You know, but when somebody gives a Japanese person money, it looks like they were like, fuck it, I'm going to go all out. And that's cool. But it's like they have a small budget and they don't want to put it towards consoles. They rather put it into a very quick cell phone game. And if somebody don't hold their feet to the fucking fire, there's going to be issues in the future. And I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. All this fucking circle jerking for Japanese people, Japanese developers, it's going to come ahead to where the fucking Koreans and the Chinese are just going to outstrip them. I guarantee you Project Eve is going to mop the floor with a lot of fucking games. I guarantee you. That's a Japanese game. That's the type of flair and that's the type of flair that you would get with a Japanese game.
Yeah. However, I'm also reminding myself that we live in very different times now. What was acceptable, like even I'm gonna say 20 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying 20 years. Jesus Christ, I feel old. But what was acceptable 20 years ago would probably be looked upon now by a bunch of minorities as being offensive and all this other shit, and it would probably get shit canned just out of sheer PR nightmare, rather than being. I feel you. I know there's a lot of games. I wish games from the past would be brought back to today. Unfortunately, there are too many of these new minority groups that want their representation to be forced down our throats in every style of media out there.
How can you say that, Inquisitor? They are people too, and they need to be represented. How dare you? You're just an incel that just wants your people represented. You had your time for 100 years. Let us have our time. That's what this is about, right?
Basically, yeah. Like, well, there's that. There's the LGBT alphabet fucking group there.
I don't mind what the fuck you do, what you suck on, what you put in your asshole. I don't give a fuck what you do. I don't care. But if you're going to represent, right? Like I'm a black guy, clearly. We only represent like 20% of the population of the United States. So if a person makes a game that is from the fucking descent, right? I should not half the population of that game shouldn't be black if you're going to represent it properly.
The thing is, I don't care what the races are in games. Like you got games like Horizon that are like melting pots of races and stuff. No,
wait, before you go on, go ahead. In terms of Horizon, because of the humans were rebirthed from all those zygotes, that's why they look the way that they do. So they have an excuse, but they're on some thin ice though.
Well, my point is that I don't care what races they have in a game, as long as it's like don't put don't put some Norwegian Russian dude in for example the Caribbean and expect some Soviet pirates to be one. Don't have fucking.
His white ass ain't gonna be no fucking Caribbean.
Don't put Canadians. I'm Canadian. Don't put Canadians in like Australia and expect that to mesh.
Patrick, what's going on, man? We about to close this shit out. What you gotta say, Patrick?
No, I was also going to say a good game for representation was also Red Dead Redemption. Forgot to mention that too.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like, I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and there's like so many races, so much diversity with races in that game, and it makes all the characters flush out because you get all these interactions with different races, and it makes the characters seem more real.
It shouldn't be in a time frame. I'm just saying.
Also makes more. Well, actually, it does make sense because during those times, was it Canada, U.S. or was it mainly Canada? Because there was the railroad being built, and a lot of workers were imported from China to work on those railroads.
This is true, but I'm gonna tell you right now. As a black man.
Sorry.
As a black man, I'm gonna tell you right now. During those times, the 1800s or 1700s, I guess that's when the time frame was, right? I wouldn't be able to just walk the streets like that dude in that game. I ain't gonna be able to do morning, nigger. Hey, what's going on, guys? That's not gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? If it's a video game, I get it, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be able to walk around in the streets like that. That's so freely.
Yeah, but what I was trying to say before we went off the edge there was that in these days there's this push to try and be representative of every single thing out there, and if you don't have that in your game, then you're a bigot or whatever. And so I think that's heavily impacted a lot of Japanese development as well as Western development.
I do too. But you know what I believe though? I guarantee you, I feel like the Chinese are impervious to this shit, yo. Chinese and Korean, huh?
It's been in Japanese games for over 30 years, that kind of stuff, Like, an example being Persona 2. At the end of the game, you get to choose who you have a relationship with. You could be in a gay relationship with a guy for all they care.
They really don't care in Japan. Like, they don't give a fuck. And it was just regular because that's how it was. I could guarantee them.
It's only in recent years where people are becoming far more violently aggressive towards this subject, and people are like, okay, do we put this in there or not? Do we put this thing in there or do we not and just leave it neutral, and if we leave it neutral, are people going to buy it? No, and it's
well. Here's the thing, right? I'm gonna say something about me, right? As a big old black man, right? One of my favorite animes of all time is Sailor Moon. That shit's funny as hell.
Classic.
But you know what though? There was like the not Jupiter. What the fuck was it? It was the other Uranus and some other bitch. Both of them were fucking lesbians in Japan.
The one that tried to the one they tried to rewrite as cousins in the Western release for a while.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. I haven't seen it in such a long time, but they were lesbians. They've been doing that shit for a very long time. See, the thing is, the Japanese are very sexual and the Western are very violent. So,
hey, yo, Josh.
So,
yeah, what's going on, man?
I know you about to cut out, man. I just want to I just wanted to chime in on this shit real quick. Now, in my opinion, when it comes to the Japanese developers, I still believe that they're making really good games. You know what I'm saying? With that said, there are some key things that I think they can step up on. And first being the technology. I feel like they could be more up to date on the technology that they're using when they're making their games. So whether that be the engines, letting go some of these old ass engines that they've been using to make games, and also online functionality. They need to step up with the user experience with online functionality for their games. A lot of times, I don't know if you notice, their games don't have that ease of play when it comes to multiplayer functionality. Just inviting your friend can be a task in some of their games.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So they can step it up in that area, and it's a lot of little things that become like a damn. Come on, y'all still doing this? Like it's 2022. Like step it up type shit. You know what I'm saying? But like the technology, if they could kill the technology, if they could step it up with the technology and the online functionality, I'm good. They could keep doing what they're doing, man. It's no beef. You know what I'm saying? I want them to be competitive in those areas. What is my right with them? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I feel like they don't have too much to go. I feel like the market is kind of pushing them to be more competitive. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like once the world stops being so bloody fucking soft, then we can get better content in anime and everything the fuck else.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's a big problem.
Did you see that Spy X Family controversy going around?
No. What was that all about?
So basically what's going on, there's a troll on 4chan or Reddit or TikTok or whatever, but they're saying that so there is a scene where the guy and his daughter were just playing around with each other, you know, like he was just like playing with her, you could say. And
with his daughter, with his daughter. Okay.
And the TikToker, whatever you want to fucking call him or her, I don't fucking know, but they said it was sexual because there's like pink stuff on her face, like the I don't know what you call it. It was like her face was blushing and she was happy, and then they took that as that being over sexualized, and then they're trying to get the show canceled because of that.
You know, they didn't want to get what's her name, Meg Thee Stallion, canceled. You know, for being on prime time and popping her pussy at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They didn't want to do that though. That's cool.
I know.
Huh. You know, it's so they pick and choose whatever they want to pick and choose. I'm so tired of it. And that's one of the reasons why Sony is censoring this shit, because they have all eyes on them. I'm not condoning it. I really think you should do what you do, but that's what's really fucking happening. And it sucks. The sensitive ass pampered. I'm just tired of it. But to wrap this shit up, when it comes to Japanese developers, I feel like if they don't have those limitations and they can finally do what they want to do without being crucified, I feel like they have the potential to fucking not only be competitive, but if they were to make a Final Fantasy game in an open world setting and have the same graphic fidelity as Horizon, I've always wanted to see Final Fantasy VIII, the desert and all that other shit, being open world. I always wanted that shit.
But you know what's hype though? Persona 6 is hype though.
I gotta look into that. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Japanese ain't making up. They're making their money through other means. I just want them to also make their money traditionally so I can play those games. I'm not playing a cell phone game. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to cap.
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Because right, a majority of their market's mobile games.
It is, and that's why people are like, "Oh my god, they do so good." No, nigga, it's the fucking it's the fucking cell phone industry and Nintendo that's making it inflate like that.
Yeah, Nintendo, like I think over there single-handedly they sold what 20 million Switches.
I just showed the fucking thing. 47.5%. They half the market is Nintendo.
Jesus.
Half the market, 47.5. Konami is second with those fucking gambling machines at 6.5%. Square Enix at 6.5%. Namco Bandai at 5.8%. The Pokemon Company did 4.8. Sony is 4.5. Sega is 3 because of the gambling shit. That's all I'm saying. I want the traditional things back because the worlds that they built was so fantastical and utterly ridiculous in a good way. And I like the fucking banter. Like, Metal Gear Solid 2 was a fucking awesome game. They went all out. It was so quirky. They didn't give a fuck what it sounded like. Raiden looked like a fucking bitch.
But unfortunately, because of 9/11, they had to take some stuff out.
That's fine, and that's understandable. But the rest of the fucking content, with the fat man, the bomber, what I'm saying, the girl that couldn't die and shit like that. You got a vamp and shit, but she was bisexual all the way 21 years ago. That motherfucker was bisexual and had a lover with a black dude. They've been doing this shit. I don't understand. Like, maybe they're afraid that it's not going to. I don't know what they're afraid of. You know what I'm saying?
Because it's like the NRA wants something to blame, and they blame it on the video games because they'll get more people to buy their guns. And if they get more people to buy the guns, then people put more blame to the video games and censor them more.
It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. I guarantee you, though, once all these things are lifted, we can get some really ridiculous games because the Japanese are literally creating genres. There was no genre that was a fucking mobile platforming game like Shadow of the Colossus. There was nothing like that before it. There was these experiences that I grew up with that never existed prior to them.
Have you ever played Digital Devil Saga?
No.
Shin Megami Tensei?
Yeah.
I was going to get that shit. Like I said, I fell off of all of the Japanese shit. So if you got some suggestions, just DM that shit, and I'll see what that's all about.
Which is it? Is Shin Megami Tensei a spin-off of Persona, or is Persona a spin-off of the other way?
Persona spin-off of it.
Okay.
Because think about it like this: Shin Megami Tensei was 1987, and Persona was 1998.
Okay, that's right. Yes.
But that's the thing too, man. Like, people sit there and say that Nintendo keeps up. Nintendo has been consistent with their games for fucking decades.
Sometimes they made mistakes, but they're mostly consistent.
Most of the stuff that they, like Mario Sunshine was a mistake, right?
The Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy was a crazy mistake. The 3DO, what the fuck was that? The little connector for Saturn, that was a mistake. That's somebody else, but like for Nintendo, they made a lot of mistakes, but it wasn't a mistake as in a business decision where they were trying to grab money and it didn't work. They tried something new and it just didn't stick. That's fine. The Wii U was a mistake technically, and they came back and had a refined Wii U, which is the Switch, and it did game busters numbers. And that's great.
Yes,
say again.
It's probably going to outsell the PS2. People are saying.
I don't think so.
I think it will. And this is coming from a PlayStation guy. I think the Switch will outsell the PS2 because let's not forget, Japan is a huge mobile market. And what is the Switch but a mobile device?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they always have to compete with cell phones. So I think what it's going to boil down to is it's going to slow down at 120 million. That's where it's going to slow down at because people are going to get restless. I want something better. I can't deal with these old ass looking games.
Because there's also something around saying that a Switch Pro might be on the way because of because Breath of the Wild 2 can't work properly on a regular Switch. That's what they're saying.
Well, that's the thing.
And I am playing on a Switch Lite.
So if they decide to continuously make incremental upgrades, then yes, it'll blow past the PS2.
Now, if we get a 4K Switch, that'll be a big deal.
Like if they're just going to keep it like the same form factor, and it just be an upgraded version of the same one that can still play all the legacy games, then that's a different story. Like if your old Switch can play the newer 4K Switch games, then that's still within the same generation, and that's a different story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then you can see 200 million. Then you can see 200 million, maybe.
Maybe, but now the Switch has competition now that the Steam Deck is a thing.
That's not going to do anything. That ain't going to do a damn thing, man. Because there's a lot of reasons. That's like, to me, when I see the Steam, it reminds me of Game Gear.
What it reminds you of and what it can actually do are two different things.
No, I get it, but what I'm saying is that the problem with that is because they don't have the games are always going to sell your shit. You need to have your own original game. I get the concept though, because you can play the Steam type games, but you still need a killer app though. You know what I'm saying? Something that will make you get that shit. That was the problem with Microsoft. Microsoft didn't have a killer app really that will make you want to buy a fucking Xbox. There's nothing on there that makes me want to buy it.
That's true.
You know, like even if Sony decides to do what do you call it? Timed exclusivity for their exclusives. I don't feel like waiting a year, and I don't feel like fucking with a PC. I don't have time for that shit. I will just buy.
That's why everything. That's why I have the chance to play everything comes out.
I just personally, I have the money to get a really nice fucking PC on spot tonight. I will not do it.
How much would you say I should spend on a PC? Because I have like $2,500 on me right now to do for a PC.
I bought a pre-built for $799, and it's been good for me so far.
I was going to say $2,000 would probably be well into future-proofing your shit. But here's the thing: there's the architecture that's different. You know what I'm saying? So like they may come up with a new architecture that does ray tracing a lot better. Yeah. And even though you spent that much money, like I would say 1,000. Say 1,000. Say 1,000.
I would wait because the 40 series are dropping soon. So
well, if we're just talking about the tower and nothing else, I'd say spend maybe about 800, and then leave the GPU open for speculation.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to say before we end this is it's something that's not related. It's about the GPUs and just chip shortages and shit like that. Everybody's like looking like, what the fuck is going on? Because the Series X and S, they have that. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We can speculate. But I do know that Sony and a lot of other people are creating these factories that should be done either late this year or early next year. And that should help the constraints that they are currently having or whatever the case is. So I wonder how that's going to be. I wonder how well the PS5 would have sold if they didn't have the chip shortages. That's always been something that was on my mind.
I think without the chip shortages, the PS5 would have been at the PS4's pace, if not slightly faster, up until a certain point. But we'll never know.
Because Sony is not looking for console sales per se. They're looking for what do you call it? The subscription service. That's what they're looking for, because that's where they're making their money. And this is what I believe. I said this with Ken, if he's still in there. What they're going to do, because they notice that they're doing a lot of games as a service, is that we're going to still have the single player games that we like, but notice how all of the single player games that is coming out of Sony, they're very mechanically complicated with grindy type elements. You know what I'm saying? Something you have to work for and kind of like build type, mechanics that you can build your own builds and shit. And to me, that's indicative of making a game multiplayer. So I feel like the games are going to translate over to some sort of free to play situation, which will go on to the Spartacus. And that's how they're going to make their money, because they still they take 30% of the microtransactions from other from other developers. Now they get 100% of that shit. So it's going to be very curious to see what the trends like. People are mad about games as a service. If you do it right, everybody can win. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the formula with a little bit of tweaking, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. But
as someone who highly values ownership, I see this as a big, piss in the face kind of move to me.
Well, you can still own the game, but then for the people that want to play, who that?
If it's a live service, you do not own anything.
No. I'm talking about I'm not talking about okay. So look at Horizon, right? You can buy Horizon. It's a single player experience. It's complete. But if they decide to make Horizon into a co-op game, right? No, you won't own that one, but the base game you do own. You know what I'm saying? That's no different from games that close down their servers and you don't get to play the multiplayer element.
Yeah, but the problem is there's a lot of games now that require that multiplayer or at least an online component to be present, or you can't even play the base game.
I'm hoping they don't go to that. I hope that that's why I said if they play their cards right, both people can have their way. You know what I'm saying? Because Gran Turismo, that's a very polished game, man, and it's fucked up by them limiting most of like 80% of the game.
I mean, that's just one example. Another one is Warhammer Vermintide. When I first tried to boot up that game for single player, and you know what? It wouldn't even go to the main menu unless I subscribed to Plus. I'm serious.
So wait, Warhammer? You said that's the free to play game?
No, it's not free to play. It's a game that I purchased on a disc. It was Warhammer Vermintide. Or Warhammer End Times Vermintide. I installed the game, booted it up, and before I could even get to the main menu, it blanked out and took me to a PS Plus subscription window.
That's wild. But let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What were your plans on playing the game? Just single player?
Just single player.
Yeah, that's some fuck shit.
Yeah. It wouldn't even let me go to the main menu unless I subscribed, and that's.
But people don't understand why that's happening. That's why I said that subscription services. You can't have a full-fledged game and be profitable on a subscription service. It's going to have some sort of component where you do have a free-to-play element to it if you want that shit to work. Like the way that Sony is doing it for now, it seems sound. I'll put it that way. I do not like Gran Turismo and its setup. I really don't. Let them fix. They need to fix that shit post haste. Like absolutely. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I would have. Or the game should be $20. Then put it that way. If you want to do that, make it $20.
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Don't have me pay $70 or even $60. Don't have me pay $60 and then I can't play the fucking game the way I want to. I can't upgrade my car. I could just fucking drive around the track with the dumb AI. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. Now, if they decide to put like a free-to-play model on there and I can still do most of the shit that I can do, that's no problem. I get it. Because that's it, most multiplayer games. I would love to play Warhawk, you know what I'm saying? Or, Starhawk that had multiplayer elements. I mean, you can play single player.
Starhawk. God, I love Starhawk so much. I'm so sad that game is dead.
You want to know what fucked up Starhawk? The fucking frame rate. That was the only thing that fucked it up.
Really?
The frame rate was all over the place from 60 to 30 to 30 to 60 to 60 to 60 to 30 to 60. I'm like, God damn, stay still. You know what I'm saying? It was fucked up my aiming.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can understand because I remember if you went into an intense area, the frame rate tanked a little. But by and large, if you were in a relatively, it's like say in the desert areas, the frame rate was pretty consistent.
Yeah, that whole concept of you building, that was Fortnite from back then. That's what that was. You just couldn't build it the way you wanted to, but that's basically what it was. It was Fortnite.
It wasn't just Fortnite. It was team-based base building, and it was amazing.
Oh, my gosh, man. It was like, I will not do this. Anyway, thank you, God, for not breaking that shit up. I can't. That shit's painful, man. That is a rough time, man. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for hearing me out. I know the title was a little clickbaity. I get it. How else you gonna join in? Shit. I know y'all motherfuckers creeped in that shit. Was like, what this motherfucker talking about, man? You know, but I wanted to get something to grab your motherfucking attention. And as soon as you came in this bitch, I was like, gotcha, bitch. And you couldn't get out. So anyway, I appreciate you guys showing up.
Me, man. I'm all about that drama.
I see you in there fighting, yo. You fighting a good fight, man.
Oh, you should have come in the space earlier, man. That was just some daft shit. That
I needed some energy for this space, but let me tell you, man, I wanted to be in that space, a couple of those spaces. I wanted to be in those spaces so bad. See, the thing is, a lot of motherfuckers, because I make great arguments. You know what I'm saying? If you have something to rebuttal, then fine. You know what I mean? It's not that I won't admit that I'm wrong. I definitely will. But it ain't going to be an easy win. I can tell you that. You better have your shit together when you speak to me. And the people that have a problem with what I said, I can guarantee you, they ain't here for a reason. I was speaking straight fucking facts. You can't deny that. You know what I'm saying? You can't. The market has changed so drastically in Japan. For you to sit there and say that nothing's changed and everything is okay would be like, okay, so why did Konami do what they did? They were losing money and they didn't feel like investing that fucking much money anymore. Why did most Japanese developers do what they did? You know what I'm saying? It was the money. They weren't getting as much as they wanted and they became super conservative about their shit. That's what it boils down to. Let's be real here. Huh?
It boils down to people needing to realize that companies are just that. They are a company. They don't care about people. They care about money.
Flat out. All they care about is money. And people, even with Sony, I got my eye on the motherfuckers. So far, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and make drama out of nothing. So far, they're not doing anything too egregious. But the second they do something egregious, I'm on that shit. You know what I'm saying? Or any fucking company. It doesn't fucking matter. You know what I'm saying? It's not just Sony. It doesn't matter what it is. People are just sitting there. They will die on that hill. I am fine with Sega. Sega is still good. The consoles, they stopped console manufacturing. Sega is still good. You just jealous. There's no more games anymore. Sega, we still have the best games. You will never get, listen, it's over. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to prevent. The Japanese make some banging ass fucking games. I just want them to be head and shoulders like they used to be. That's all I'm saying.
Want them to go back to the roots.
Go back to the roots. And I don't want to play cell phone games, period. I don't like those type of games. There's nothing wrong with them. I just don't like those games. I want to be transported into a place of fantasy. That's what I like. But anyway, thank you guys. Thank you, White Chocolate. Thank you, Inquisitor. Who else is in here? Thank you, everybody, really, for joining in there. I really appreciate it. I can't even mention everybody. My head kind of hurts. Low-key, high-key.
But, thanks for having me over, man.
No problem. Anytime, man. Anytime. You jump in. It's usually Saturdays at this time at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Or you can catch the recorded video on YouTube, which is, Gamecast. All right, guys. Peace.